Give me.
Now that we are so many and everything went down.
There you go. Okay, I'm guarding the.
Go, Cody, go.
Go on. All right, maybe.
Let me see. Let me see.
Okay, yeah, I got a connection to this. It's live. It might be at a different URL. Let's see.
I don't see on the page, Tron page, nothing streaming.
Hang on. Is a link, guys? No? Okay, I have it. I just need a link. Give me the link, YouTube, somewhere. Wow. Here we go. Tron Project /live should work. I can't share the key with you without showing it to the world.
Don't do it.
How do I? Let's see. Come on. We live? I think we're live. Tron Project. Tron Project /live. Yes.
Okay,
yes, we're good.
Whew, welcome back. Okay, now I can hear you all properly and everything is great. Okay. Oh wow. Another live.
Yeah, audio's
okay,
good.
So we can continue with that.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Everything is perfect. Okay, perfect. Thank you for coming back, Cody. Do you think you are a slave to Tron because you had to come back?
Absolutely, because you're just like, get home, Cody. Come on, I'm there, and you're like, where's Cody? Where's Cody? I'm like, I'm here, man. I enjoy.
Sorry about that. I mean, you can take another job if you don't volunteer for TZM or somewhere.
I will be Tron slave. It's fine. Don't worry about it, guys.
We got a promotion.
You will get a promotion.
Yeah, I do too. Got a feedback loop somewhere.
There it is.
Nope, that's good.
That's perfect.
Okay. So part 2?
Perfect, yeah. Yeah, part 2 of the modern slaves. I remember first when I saw this idea of modern slaves in a documentary called The Modern Servitude that I saw in around 2009. And what was interesting about this documentary is not that they presented something new, but they presented every kind of job in this slaverish kind of context and language. And they were saying, look at the slaves, how they go to work. Look at the slaves, look at the slaves' owners, how they behave with their slaves, And when you put another language in another context, you see it in a very, very different way. You don't see workers going to work to make a living. You don't see something like you see slaves being forced to go there. And what is interesting is that I think school makes us very accustomed to this kind of servitude. Like you have to stay there and people will tell you what to do and when to do it. And you don't have to say anything back to them. Like you respect that, you do that if you want to be part of this society. What will happen, I was asking in Tron documentary, if you say, okay, I don't want to be part of this system. I just go and make my own food. I build my own house. I know, fuck off with your crazy ideas in this society. Can you do that? Because I don't think you can ever do that. No one will let you do that. Everything is owned in this world. So if you want to play the game, you play it by the rules. And that's why it's a problem. That's why I'm saying people are slaves. And I understand on the other hand that we cannot all of us do whatever we want, like build whatever houses we want and food here and food there and live everywhere. We have to have a society that's organized. But the way that it's organized today, where you have abundance and you also force people to work 8 hours a day, it is completely fucked up. That's my argument. Not that we want everything to be like, oh, it's an anarchy everywhere. We have to organize ourselves, but provide trade-free goods and services to as many people as possible because we have the means. So that's my argument, because people tend to go to this idea of, so what the fuck do you want? You want everyone to just go fucking like in the world and hunt pigeons and whatever the fuck they want, they will do to eat and fuck like shit everywhere. No, I don't want that. I want a smarter society that takes advantage of our abundant resources. That's what I want.
Yeah, I think most people don't see that our resources are abundant and that this is even possible. I mean, most people only see the world as it is now, which is we have to do these to keep the system going, and that's how it works, you know. And everybody has to play their part. And my part's not that bad, you know. I'm okay. I'm still free to do what I want on the weekend, you know. And they don't see how it could be abundant because we have this false scarcity basically everywhere.
And fucked up values. Like I want 5 cars and 3 homes.
Yeah.
That's why, of course. Yeah.
So people like it's hard. How do you approach a person like that you know says, well, how is it possible? Like what do you mean? Like I have to do my job. How do you guys respond to them?
A lot of people think that if they don't have a job assigned to them, this forced, this like coercive job, that nothing would get done. And then you have to remind them of all the things that they do for free that nobody's forcing them to do, that they actually do a better job of because they're interested in it and they want to do it. Still, it is just so deeply ingrained that, like, especially here in the American tribe, like if you say you don't like your job, like if you utter those words out loud, it's like almost the most taboo thing you could say. It's like you're so unpatriotic, you hate this country, you might as well just get out, you freeloader, what do you want to be, a bum? Like, I mean, it's just such a, like, you can't even say these words, and it's like they don't know the difference between work and a job. Like there's a huge difference. I don't know how to explain it to people. I really don't.
I think yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And what Theo was saying as well, that I think it all starts with the educational system and people just having to adhere to whatever rules are put in place. And in America, I think it's I don't know, but based on what I've seen as well, you start by pledging allegiance to the flag, and it's very military like. So it's like, yes sir, I will do that, and so on. It's just like the slavery that we have today in society, with most people going to the jobs. It's like the military, you know, where you're subordinate to another person and you have to do it and you have to follow the rules. So people are so indoctrinated to believe that this is the way to go, and you have to serve the system, serve your country, serve you know, the status quo. Yeah.
Yeah, and meanwhile, they all believe that they're free. You know, everyone is like zombied out with this idea that they're fucking free. And even like, I was talking to this guy who washed dishes in this restaurant, and he wasn't making enough money to live in a house, so he lived on the beach outside. And at the time, I was living in my car, and he was so fucked up by the system that he was basically a bum, and he still was free. And that was like one thing I could never agree with him, because no matter what I said, he still couldn't get it out of his head. That you're so limited by this system. Like,
I'm sure that even back in the days when this classic slavery was in place, I'm sure there were many slaves were like, I mean, this is an opportunity. I think it's good for us. They will debate about, you know, at least we have access to food and so forth. We will see it now as a very weird way of thinking. But I think in the future, if Cynax society will be in place, people will look back and will in the same kind of manner. And they will think like, were those people crazy? Couldn't they be rational? You know, to see that they are forced to go to this job and this is such an illusion of choices. I think they do the same, because back in the days, they even have auctions, and you will see slaves and you will pick your slave and you will auction for them like you do today with painting or something. And they thought that this is a normal thing. It's a good thing. I mean, I think you are doing a good service to this human being to own him, because you will give food, you will give shelter and stuff like that. They were thinking this is normal. It is as normal as it is today when companies are choosing between multiple employees and you have to go for an interview. You don't stay on the stage and they will give money for an auction, but you have to come to them and please ask them, please, can I be part of your company? And what is another interesting thing is that today with this modern technology, even when you are not working, but your boss, your owner, will still keep an eye on you on Facebook, on Instagram. They will message you. They will see where you are, which is so fucked up because I'm not in that kind of environment, but I've heard people saying that they had to hide their Facebook profile because they are afraid of their owners. They will find out because they were like at a party and then the next day they didn't come to the work or something. Like, what the fuck is this? It's crazy. It's so crazy.
Yeah, that's partially why I deactivated mine, because I noticed all my bosses started friend requests. I'm like, it makes me uncomfortable. It's not like I'm posting anything bad, but they almost would rather me see, post pictures of me getting drunk all the time than posting things about, reorganizing our system. That is just so taboo. It's like the most dangerous topic to ever bring up to any. I mean, I could talk about murdering children or whatever, murder and watching on television MMA fighting and bloody and, football players being tackled and injured. That's not, you can talk about that all day you want, but if I talk about something that's like relevant to human development, it's like, what kind of sicko are you? Like I'm gonna be out of
capitalism. What?
Yeah, I get
you must be a communist.
Kinds of things. They're ridiculous.
Because you want to ruin their business, you want to revolt against them. So they are like, "What? This human being is thinking too much. We don't have to let them. Just after work, go and drink your minds, and then come next day."
It's funny though, Jen. No, it was last time I had a job when I was waitressing on Hawaii. I talked to everybody about the Venus Project. I was like, talk to my tables, and I was like, I don't know, start conversations and talk about whatever the fuck I wanted. Like, I didn't care.
Well, I can remember one time when I was a hairstylist, and you would be forced to have conversations because you're attached to that person for 45 minutes. And I remember having a conversation with a guy about the Big Bang Theory, and he started getting really mad at me because he doesn't believe in that, and he has more of a religious outlook. And I got really scared, like I might get fired. It's so crazy because like we're living in, at the time it's like 2018, and you think back to like, when they would put people in jail for going against religious beliefs, and I'm like, we're in this technological revolution, and I'm still in fear of being in trouble for talking about a scientific theory. Like it's just so crazy. I don't know.
I think the world moved from slaves, owners, and kings to companies and this so-called capitalism or democracy. It's an indirect way of the same kind of system. Like back in the days, the king will cut your head if you say something against him. Today, you have laws, and people will say, we don't punish you directly, but indirectly. Like you don't have a job, or you are not allowed to take a loan, and so forth. Like look at, I always say this, if Google would be a country, it will be worse than China in terms of their rules. What you are allowed to say, what you're not allowed to say, what you're allowed to post or not. Imagine that with their own rules. But because it's a company, although they have more users than China has people, although it's a company, people say, okay, it's their whatever. It's their job to do this kind of thing. It's their business. You don't like it, move away. You can say the same about China. I mean, if you come along and say, okay, China is very abusive to people, I would say, so what? Move to another country. If I were to think the same kind of way, which is a very wrong way of thinking, and it's very like a perverse way of thinking. It's awful.
I also want to mention that many jobs in our modern world are bullshit jobs. So if you ask people if what they do is meaningful to somebody, of course there are jobs in the social field, but there are also many jobs who are basically unnecessary. So they don't have any purpose. And yeah, that's also just so stupid. I find it mind-boggling, really. It's so amazing to see that we can fly to the moon, we can build a large hadron collider, yet there are still people forced to go to a job and doing meaningless tasks.
The beep beep thing, like when you go to buy something, like beep beep, okay,
Yeah,
exactly. 35.96. I mean, I can see that as well. I mean, I can pay it for it. It's a shame for those people. I'm not mocking them, but it's a shame for their brains. They should do something else. We have cancer to solve. We have stars to explore. What the fuck are we doing for the sake of keeping the slave system in place?
Completely. And you know, for me personally, the thing that really made me understand like how mental this system is was living in the Middle East for 4 years, growing up in Qatar and in the UAE, and seeing how absurd the entire system is and how unnecessary it is. Just constantly building for what, and creating jobs for what, you know. And you could really see the classes there and what slavery really was, because there are 3 classes. It was very clear. You have the locals who own and run everything. Then you have some expats, white people who are managing some shit. And then you have all the poor Indians, Nepalese, or whatever, who are the slaves, building everything and cleaning and doing all the dirty work. And that's the majority of the population. They're completely controlled by the locals. And it's just that there's an abundance of those cheap labor forces that you can just take over from India for pennies, because it's so cheap. And they're just building hotels and buildings that are empty, you know, like in China. I mean, where they're, you know, also constantly building new buildings and whatever that are also just empty, just to increase their GDP.
What's the difference between those slaves who built the pyramids under kings and today that Indians or people from other parts of the world build tall buildings for the other kind of kings and rich people? What's the difference? And if someone has this argument that, yeah, but we kind of need that to build shit, and it's like a necessary evil, then I'm like, okay, if you accept such a world, okay, but I'm not okay with such a world. I mean, I think it's a fucked up world. And for what? What is the end game here? Some empty buildings, like Seb was saying. What is some pyramids that are now used by other, you know, business owners today to get tourists from other sides of the world to look. These pyramids, slaves built them. You know, look at them. It only cost you $20 to come with a camel and see them. Like, you know, it's shitty.
Exactly. Do you know the World Cup 2022 in Qatar? You can see slaves obviously there working.
Workers, not slaves.
Good employees.
And then also, if we're talking about the Middle East, I mean, we can also talk about women being slaves. I mean, in some countries, women are still not allowed to go anywhere without a male being there. So a male is like their owner, you know, and women, you know, from Saudi Arabia, for example, women try to escape. The only ones that can escape are the ones that are already privileged, you know, and you can hear tons of horror stories about their experiences, you know, whether they could escape or they couldn't escape. And, you know, if they get sent back, like they treat them as like, I don't know, just treat them like absolute shit as well. So it's, women are still slaves to men, you know, in some countries.
But that's their religion. That's the religion,
yeah, that's
you know.
The religion, yeah. And then the rest of the world just stands by and accepts it, you know. People accept that, oh, it's culture, so it is what it is.
I've seen the summer here. I've seen little girls that are from Muslims religion, from the Muslim religion, being so wrapped up that you can only see their eyes. And I'm like, you know, where is child protection now? You know, because they will come after you about so many other shit. But when it comes to such things, they say, oh, it's religion, you know. But if my religion will be to let my kid walking naked or with a chain attached to his leg, people will come after me and it'll be like, no, that's not religion, you know, that you are crazy. But what's the difference, you know? It's morality.
I saw this documentary. I saw this documentary recently where about a few girls that tried to escape from Saudi Arabia, and one got stopped on the way to Australia, and I think in the Philippines, and they like her. She couldn't. They wouldn't let her on the next flight because her like uncles and father, they're, you know, rich people, powerful people, so they were able to stop her and then canceled. You know, they didn't let her on the next flight. And basically, they came over there and like beat her in the airport and like fucking like tied her mouth together, tied her to a wheelchair, and dragged her onto an airplane like that. you know, and then no one's heard from her since. And people just stood by, like the airline people let that happen. You know. And then, you know, what she was saying is, I can't go back to my country. I will get killed. And that is what will happen.
Yeah, I think that's another danger of the system is all these tribes separated, because you do see all these migrants that don't have anywhere to go, mostly because of, like, you know, climate change is going to force a lot of people out of where they live, and they don't have anywhere to go because they have no rights or money. And then they become different types of slaves where, like, they are forced into, like, you know, all kinds of horrible situations. And people, you know, that sound like an accident now, but people in, like, the American mindset is, well, that's almost like their own fault for being poor, which is so crazy. But, like, they look at people who are from other tribes as, like, you know, outsiders, and there's nothing they can do to help them. They don't look at them as a human being. They look at them as this outsider, and they can separate themselves from any kind of abuse like that. And it is really shocking because, like, if I were to witness something like that, I don't know if I'd be able to, you know, I would probably try to help that person as much as I possibly could, because that would just be my reaction. But it is really shocking to see how many people can just block that off because their mentality of, you know, they're just separate.
I think if someone was pulling the strings, a bunch of people there would have probably also, like, maybe they would have lost their jobs if they would have intervened. So there are, like, all those forces in place. So even though that you would say outside of the situation that you would help, I would definitely also say so. But if I had my job on the line and I have a family that I have to feed, it's also tricky. Yeah.
Yeah, with the migrants in Europe, it's a big problem because they come and then they have nothing, and they are so vulnerable. You are very vulnerable to I mean, you will work for whatever it is. You will work for whatever it is because you have no other options. And I fail to see how people think that this is not a form of slavery. I fail because when they measure slavery, and you will look at official numbers, they say, okay, there are 30, 40, whatever they say, millions of slaves in the world. But the way that they measure it, it's so arbitrary, I would say, that it's exactly like poverty. Like they measure poverty, they say whoever makes below $1.9 a day, it's poor. But what about the one who makes $1.91 per day? You know, those are not on the list. And if you were to change, I've read a statistic from like Ethiopia, I think, with this kind of measurement, they said 30% of Ethiopia is in extreme poverty. But if they were to put a little bit higher that number, that it's again not survivable, it will be like 80% of Ethiopia. So it's completely like different. If you were to do the same with slaves and say, okay, how many people work in a forced way because they cannot afford to eat or to live? I think you will go to crazy numbers. You'll go into billions.
It reminds me of like unemployment. Is they don't count people who have been out of like a job for so long. They're no longer unemployed. They're just like, just don't count them at all.
Exactly.
It's like, what? No, we have the lowest unemployment of all time. Nobody's working.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I would say, how do you problem? Like, what, like knowing basically in order to survive in this world, we have to be a slave, at least some of the time. How do you guys deal with that?
Not very well.
Picking up dog shit.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's not something I want to do.
I
think it's tricky.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Right, and yeah,
Completely.
It goes to like Jen was saying. It's like I can go back every time, and it's like, you know, knowing about Trump before I start getting back into the system, and then when I'm actually working, it's like all that stuff has to go out the window. It's like that cognitive dissonance. It's like you can't maintain, oh, I'm a fucking slave right now, and oh, hi, Mr. Customer, here's your order. Just they don't go together so well.
But for me, it helped actually, because like for me, I just work, like you guys probably know, I just work for like short periods of time, and I save as much money as possible, and I quit, and then I hold those savings for as long as I can. Now it's been over 2 years. But when I work so well because I know that I'm a slave for that time, but at least just for that time. Like, and I always keep it in my mind, like, just fucking do this, get it over with, and then you can live for a limited amount of time on this limited amount of money.
Yeah, currently I've adapted that mindset, so it's a lot easier for me because I know in the long run this is just a dumb job. I could quit this job, go do what I want to do, and then get another dumb job. But before I had those goals and that mindset, it was kind of like a bottomless pit. Like you feel like there's no escape, like you're just kind of stuck.
Not just a job, it's identity.
You know, the better job, the better career or whatever. You're constantly chasing after this idea or this dream that really doesn't even exist.
It's also tricky. Yeah, sure. You want to say? You can continue.
No, I'll just keep rambling.
I just wanted to mention that it's tricky to. I think this is a solution to trick the system, but it's also extremely tricky if you like need medical insurance, or you have a big family, or you cannot move to many places because of all kinds of reasons. So imagine,
or you're from an unprivileged country.
Yeah, exactly. So imagine if today a house costs, the price is like $100,000, $200,000, or $300,000 or euros. How in the world can you buy this box to live in? Because it's something fucking essential, you know. How to buy it when you make a month like 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 euros? How can you, unless you enslave to a loan, you take a loan that you have to pay for years, maybe 20 years? I mean, it's so obvious that you cannot succeed unless you do such things. Or if you want to live a completely different kind of life and you don't want to own anything and you jump from one place to another, if you can, if you have opportunities. But I'm saying officially in this world, how can I buy a house? Like I see here in the region where I live, I was looking for an apartment to rent one time when I was working with TVP and I had money to rent. And I entered into a rental company, and they were like jumping on me with like, "Do you want to buy a house?" I was like, "What?" They had offers there, like just 150,000 euros. I was like, "What? What in the world? Who comes here and be like, okay, I'm looking to buy a house just casually like that?" I suppose there are people who do that, but the prices are to me at least, they are completely crazy. They make absolutely no sense for a fucking box that is nothing, just a box. A car is like 10 times more complex to build and to maintain than a home, but it's 100 times cheaper. It's crazy, and that's why you get enslaved, because you cannot even buy a box for yourself. What about feeding yourself for all of your life?
Yeah.
Like
you said, I think it's a.
Go on.
No, it's a very, very tricky thing, because there are alternatives, like you mentioned as well, Zasha, like your lifestyle, you know, traveling around, just saving up some money and then going and so forth. But that's quite difficult as well, perhaps, to maintain for most people. It's only a small segment, maybe, of the population who are able to do that, and I have the mindset as well, maybe. And if you don't participate at all and don't have any money, then you are forced to resort to such measures. But there are as well maybe other alternatives, but again, they're also tricky to implement if you don't have the necessary resources. Like there are as well maybe some small smart houses and shit like that. What do you call them?
Tiny houses.
Tiny houses, yeah. Exactly, where it costs only like 5,000 euros or something to build a tiny house. But those also take a lot of steps in order to there's no structure which is like helping you or facilitating or reinforcing you into being like an anti-establishment type of person who's able to set up their own little thing so they don't have to participate in this labor for income system. There's nothing to facilitate you. There's also not too many people necessarily interested in that. Most people in your surroundings are just pushing you constantly to get a job and fit into society. So there's also that element, I think.
Yeah. You guys know about the Earth ships?
Yes, yes.
By Mike Reynolds. Yeah, he went through a lot of trouble, like just because I mean, basically it's just a completely sustainable, self-sustainable house where you can also have food and well, where he grows food and has his own electricity, collects water, everything. But he went through a lot of trouble because it didn't go by the standards. You know, just to be able to have his own house that didn't rely on the system. You know. I think he got sued and he lost his architect license. And
yeah, I know this guy. I also have a friend, and he lives in a tiny house, and officially he's not allowed to live in such a small house by law. So it's from the German government. So you're not allowed to live in such a small place.
Really?
If this doesn't sound like slavery, I mean, tell me
why. Why is it too small? Did they say or?
Yeah, it needs a proper water faucet and electricity and all that.
So you better live on the streets, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like even if you get the tiny house, like you still have to find a piece of land that is, you know, put it on and hook it up to sewage, and then that requires like permission from who knows who.
And I understand that we need such things, because if everyone creates their own like water system and so forth, you create a mess. Maybe where do you dispose all of that? Of course, we need. But if you make it insane, like it is in today's society, and it costs you so much money that you cannot afford, pretty much no one, which is like below the rich line, can afford, then of course it's a very abusive system. So I don't disagree with this kind of notion of let's organize ourselves and make sure that the house is like accessible for firefighters, for example, to put down a fire so you don't fucking burn the entire village or stuff like that. I understand such things, but don't make them in a way that you enslave people because they cannot afford to do them. You should do them like free for everyone. You should not force me. If I don't have anywhere to stay and I make a tiny house and then you tell me I'm not allowed to live there because I don't have a proper water system or whatever, this is crazy. But they will say, if you want those, it will cost you 50,000 or whatever. This is insane.
Yeah, so they force you to participate. That's dangerous slavery, you know? Force you to participate in the system.
And what is the goal out of this? So in the end, you finish with, I don't know, 67 or so, and then you have your retirement. And I know many people, they count the years. So, oh, I only have to work 20 more years and then I'm in retirement. Only 15, okay, 10. And it's like, wow.
2-1 and you're dead.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I'll be a free slave, but I'll be too old to do anything.
Yeah, you get, and that if you live in a good, like a rich country, because there are many, like in Romania, I don't think you can make a lot of your last breaths of your life through the money that you get from the government after you retire. I don't think
even if you work
can.
your ass off.
So it's even if this system will be perfect, and after you work like a slave for 65 years or up to the age of 65, you're still too like sick and too old to do much. It's like
years.
The rusty years.
Yeah, it's such bullshit. That's an argument that people have with me about like, oh, how can you just travel around the world? What about your retirement?
Yeah.
Like, I really don't care. Like my aunt works a lot. You know, she's and she's gonna get her. She has a retirement of like less than $200, and the retirement for someone who's never worked at all is like just a little bit less than that. I was like, okay, well, I'll take that.
You have that retirement for someone who doesn't work? Where do you live?
I think so, in Russia, yeah.
Oh, fuck, okay, because I don't...
Move
I'm fucked completely.
But it's a tiny, tiny amount of money. It's not enough to survive
something.
on.
I mean, I will get nothing.
Yeah.
I will get a kick in the ass. Like, you do nothing. Because people tell me, yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think it's a misconception that like America is a wealthy country, therefore like the people must be doing way better off than like say another country, but that's not necessarily true. There's a lot of people here, and I'd say the majority of people that are, like Tia was saying, yeah, they might not be counted as the poverty line because of whatever technicalities, but once you factor out all their costs of living, they're left over with nothing and barely able to get medical
nothing.
Yeah, it's like a privilege. When it should be just something everyone should have access to because you have the means to do so.
And in this modern world, you also need the credit card and you also need the phone. You cannot get hired without those. So you need a car in many instances. So it's a lot of shit like that.
I've never had a credit card and I can't do a lot of things and it's so crazy to me because they're like, well, you need debt to have good credit, which to me is
sense.
That makes no sense to me.
And the thing also about the States, it's like, I mean, the health system, think about that, it's so fucked up. Like for me, I have both passports, US and Russian, and I am like, most people would think Russia is like the poorer country, the shittier country, but if something goes wrong, I will go back to Russia, not to the States, because in the States, if I enter there and something happens to me, I'm going to be fucked up because of the healthcare system, you know? And there are a lot of minuses in the States, university as well. In Russia, you can get free education and some benefits at least, even though they're shitty, but
here by law, you have to have medical insurance, but it's not affordable. Like you either pay, I don't know, $300. This is being cheap, $300 a month for your medical insurance, but then you have like a $6,000 deductible. Well, if I had $6,000 in my bank, I would just pay for the doctor's visit in cash, and
which is going to be like $100 grand.
Yeah.
It's so insane. Like, why even give them the $300 a month? Or I could pay $700 a month and have a $1,000 deductible. So either way, I'm still having to come up with all this money up front just to be legal and still not get the help I need. Like, it's a very insane, but it's a mentality that comforts people because they think, well, I have insurance, so I'm golden. I don't know.
Yeah, and then they need their job to buy the insurance. Insurance is so fucking expensive, you know, and then they're just completely wound up in the system. It's so hard to escape it, you know. I mean, they, especially in the States, with you finish high school, you go to university, and you're immediately in debt because it fucking puts you in debt, and then immediately you have to find some work in your career, even if you don't like it. And most people don't like it because they have to choose at such an early age what they want to do in life. And, you know, they don't not really choosing what they want to do in life. They're just choosing a way to make money, you know, whatever slave, whatever kind of slavery they choose.
It's another level of fuckery because there you have such things. You have the proudest people in this capitalist shit. No one will do anything. The world will...
A job that gets so much done in the day that like the average person wouldn't get done in like a year. I mean like in like months. It's just, you know, we could use so many examples of people that do like very, but people plant the seed, you know, if you just kind of even get them.
Go on, Sophie.
Okay. I think the way that Peter Joseph put it was quite nice, quite accurate. Like he put some stats up where it was like he was showing how inequality, like classism, is pretty much hurting anything. Like it's just on everything in society. Like violence goes up, there's more inequality, innovation goes down, and inequality and classism is just a product of trade. So it's like, if then like it's just not true that actually innovation would be greater if we didn't have inequality, if we didn't have classes and trade and all kinds of other things like addiction and all kinds of other negative externalities.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a million things, like an infinite amount of things to do and discover in this world. Like you know, I would love to not have that period of time where I have to be a fucking slave. You know, there's just so much to do, so much.
For whom did Einstein work? Did they work for a company who tried to reinvent the laws of physics? I don't remember that. You know, the poor Einstein, he worked to like fix watches, and then in his spare time, he tried to develop some theories about the world. You know, Galileo the same, the other people like Louis Pasteur and so forth. They didn't work for a company. Even Marie Curie, she worked for some, like she got some grants and so forth, but she focused on a different kind of work, not for a company. So the greatest discoveries, they don't come from enslaving people. Yes, you can enslave people to build the Large Hadron Collider, but creative minds create the Large Hadron Collider. And if you replace those mindless jobs with automation, then you don't need the slaves. You know, let people be creative and let the machines be the slaves.
I think it's an interesting thing that the phrase even work smarter, not harder is a thing in society where it's like, even like I've had boss and coworkers tell me, it's like, don't do nothing, work less efficient so that you're always doing something. It's like, I'm literally like being paid to like be inefficient. It's like, I
waste as much time as possible.
Exactly. Like I just can't even wrap my head around. You want the profit, but you still want me here for 8 hours a day. But I could do the work in 7. But you won't pay me more. But what? Like there's just like not a detachment from reality.
You know, it was that saying in UK after the World War II. I think they were like, "Oh fuck, we don't have like many jobs." It was this kind of economic collapse, and they were thinking, some people in a jokingly way, like, "I think if we destroy London and rebuild it from scratch, we will fix our economy." And this is the mentality in today's world. Even here where I live, they fucking rebuild this fucking city every year. Like now, everywhere is like constructing shit and painting stuff, and next year they do the same. It's insane.
Well, you see, Theo, I have to take the Starbucks here, destroy it, and then move it right beside it because that's better for business.
Yeah, it will increase its value probably.
It'll have 2 drive-throughs.
Yeah. Because this argument of people won't do much stuff if we don't force them. So for one, most of the creative stuff doesn't come from slaves, from the people who force them, who you forced. But second is that what is your alternative? Let's continue and molest people because basically that's what you are doing. Do you want to go? I mean, the same people have something against Hitler or some kind of dictator. So why do you have something against those people when you have this kind of mentality? Because those people want the same. Like treat people like they are animals who have to work the land. If you have this mentality, I mean, I don't have anything much to say. Then I don't agree with you. I mean, go your way. I will go my way, and I will try to make people aware of this problem.
I think it's really hard to break through to people, even though in the back of their minds they know these feelings. They know deep down inside they don't want to work these jobs. They know that if they had free time, they could do a lot of things that they're actually interested in. But this culture is so in your face, constantly reminding you of who you're supposed to be. And if you don't fit that mold, you're going to be, you're not going to fit in. And that's really all we want, is just to fit in and feel belonging. So I think that's really what scares people the most. Like if I don't go to this job, I can't afford this expensive car and these expensive clothes. And, it is really weird. I see a lot of people that don't make very much money, but they drive expensive cars. And they, wear expensive clothes, and then they may not have money to give feed their children or for their medical care or for things that are actually important that they do need. I mean, it's the culture that really screws people up, because that's just how human beings learn, is we observe others, and that's just how we learn. So
it's the business of companies to make you want the new thing. So of course they influence people. You know, in Romania is this joke that there are many people who live in dorm rooms, but they have a BMW that is so expensive, but they have absolutely no money. They are completely broke. And I've seen such people with this kind of mentality. They don't even have, some people, and there are extreme cases, but some people don't have a bathroom. They have it in the backyard somewhere, like this primitive, but they have the latest BMW or something like that, or a very expensive car, you know. This mentality, and it's the fault of our trade-based society, because Apple, of course, next year will release the best phone. When I hear this, I'm like, people are falling for this shit when Apple says this is the best phone that we ever made. I mean, really? I mean, I was expecting it's a little bit like worse than the last one. Of course, it's a nonsense thing to say, but people are buying this shit, and they confuse innovation with trickery. Like companies are tricking people, and people think that this is innovation because it's a new phone or it's a bendable phone. It's innovation, and that's why they say that, okay, we need this kind of slaves in China and Taiwan to build the latest iPhone, because look at the innovation. Because their values are so messed up, you know. That's not innovation. Innovation is not having an iPhone but no health insurance. Okay, that's not innovation. I mean, there are people who have such a poor eyesight, but they have a 2K screen on their phone. Your eyesight is so poor, you couldn't, like, you should pay for an eye surgery, but no, they pay for a now 8K or whatever the fuck screen.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so that doesn't hold true. I mean, I know such people who have this argument of we need this. It's a necessary evil. It's a necessary evil. You don't understand. This work that you talk about, it cannot work. And to show you that it works, like, you have to look at organizations like Doctors Without Borders. They have 10 million patients, Doctors Without Borders, all over the world, because they do it for free. They don't ask anything from people. They do it they put their life in danger. Some people die there, some doctors, because they go to areas where is like an outbreak of disease and they die. You should look at this. You should look at the open source community. I mean, don't bullshit me, because the Android that you are using with your phone that you paid a shitload of money is made on the backs of people who did that because they cared about the community of the open source, and then Google took open source and fucking made a product out of it and makes money off of it. So there are many things in this world that are made without you forcing people to do stuff. And it's such an arrogance from people to say such things, because you fucking, like, you did nothing to combat diseases. You didn't pay Louis Pasteur. You didn't pay fucking Einstein. You didn't offer moral support for Marie Curie when she went through all that shit. You did nothing, you know, and then you say now that no, we need slaves to build this fucking world. It's such a hypocrisy from people's part. They did absolutely nothing. You're going to your office and play solitaire, or that's in the old days, because now you play like fucking Crush, whatever Saga, whatever Candy Crush, whatever fuck. You play there all day long, and then you say that, oh no, we need slaves to build this world. You build nothing. Most people are like you. You are not doing much in this world of building. So this is my rant.
What we're building is totally,
Yeah.
There was I had this realization once. Well, I went to Hawaii. To Kauai, there's a trail called the Kalalau. It takes like 16 kilometers to get there. The only way to get there is by the trail or by the boat. And you can go deep into this valley, and the valley is really, really rich. It's lush. There's mangoes, avocados, like any type of food you can imagine. And there were a bunch of hippies living there. And there were people that have lived there for like years. There were people like kind of hiding out in caves. They had this huge, huge garden, massive, massive garden. And I thought this is interesting, because these are all people that are not living in the system at all. They're completely leaving the jungle. And I came back there 2 years later, and everybody was kicked out. They'd flown helicopters in to get all the hippies out of the jungle. They said there was some incident that happened, but basically they came in there. They took people that didn't have ID and like brought them to jail. So that made me really realize that like you cannot escape. You can try. There were some hippies, I'm sure, that really went deep into the jungle and really ran away from all these guys. But even if like far away in the jungle, in the mountains, like you still cannot escape the system.
You can't even fucking commit suicide in this world because it's illegal.
Yeah.
They won't let you fucking do that.
Yeah.
In Switzerland, they have this like assisted suicide. They let people who are suffering from whatever, or they decide that they want to just kill themselves, to take like a poison, and they will like basically go to sleep and die. But in other parts of the world, even this is illegal. You're not allowed to die. Like it's my life. Who are you to say that you're on my life?
Yeah.
So we can switch to like the news, because we have something that it's in theme or a little bit about the recent discovery and then collaboration when it comes to this discovery. So because the news it's in our minds, don't worry, we'll talk about them because we don't have them. So it was a news recently, a big news, and it's about the first ever photograph took of a black hole. And it's not only an interesting news for the news itself, because it's a big discovery, but it's also in terms of collaboration. So Jen, if you want to talk, if you know, because I know that you know about this.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see that. I mean, I don't think it would be possible if like those 8 different tribes didn't collaborate and come together, because you can't just use one telescope. We wouldn't get that image. I mean, you can think about many different situations like Cassini. Again, it's a collaboration, and they were able to get these, mind-blowing images that wouldn't have been possible if people didn't work together. And I think that's just really important for people to see, because we have the technology, we have the means to do these things. We just, again, when we separate ourselves, it's dangerous. We can't make such discoveries, and we're not working to our full potential as a species.
So basically, this was why this was such a big deal, because for one, this kind of thing that we call black holes, no one knew that they existed. I mean, everyone theorized them. They saw like external influences that they said, okay, probably there is a black hole. But to photograph one, it's an extremely tricky situation, because black holes absorb light. So they had like 8 telescopes or something like that around the world, and they took all of them like pictures, not only from one side of the Earth, but while the Earth rotated around the sun. So it took them years from many different locations. Many people working on this for a very like low quality photo, but a photo that is proving exactly the theories about black holes, and not only that, but confirms theories about physics, and this will influence our societies. So it was a massive project where many engineers worked, and from many countries worked for years and years. So it's an example of collaboration. But someone will argue that, will say, okay, but even those engineers at NASA or ESA, European Space Agency, they have to be like a little bit slaves, right? So we need those, right? But what I will say to that, because they will say, okay, even this work is built on top of slaves, people who have to go to work for the European Space Agency, to punch in those numbers every day. From my understanding, after seeing so many documentaries about this topic, most people who work in such fields, they work because of pleasure. They are forced to do this because of money, but they work because their curiosity, and basically they have no choice. But if they could work for free, they will do probably even a much better job at doing this. And we also don't lack people. let's say that out of this, all of these people who worked on this project, let's say that 50% will not work if you don't force them to work. If other people in the world will not have to work for their means of survival, they will go to astronomy, they will go to help such projects. So it's never a lack of people, even if some people only like to work because you force them every morning. If you have an abundance of volunteers, then you will solve this problem. So you don't have a lack of people.
Yeah, and I mean, you also have to think about how many more people would have had people been educated differently, had they been educated, you know, not to just have some mundane job, but to be curious about the world, you know. You would have way more people wanting to do all kinds of things.
It's not like people don't want to solve problems. Do you think anyone is happy to get cancer or to get stuck in traffic? They don't like that. No one really likes this. But they have no opportunities to get involved. If they will have opportunities, they will probably fix a lot of problems. And this thing with being lazy if no one forces you, everyone is talking about the other ones. Never about myself. Like, but what about you? You know, you don't have any passions, anything like that? Maybe I have, you know, but some people are so fucking lazy. I mean, everything is about other people, not about you.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because I asked like almost everybody that I meet, and I talked to a lot of different people, you know, what would you do if, you know, if you didn't have to work for money? And nobody says I'm gonna sit on my couch and play video games all day, you know. Maybe they would do that in the beginning, you know, just to relax, you know, and like from their fucking job, you know, spend a year just relaxing, and then they would still get curious about stuff, and they would still find what they're really passionate about, and then they would have meaning in their lives, you know. They'd be able to actually live and not be a fucking slave.
Let's switch to this, like for all of you, like what would you do what would you focus on? Like Aaron, what would you focus on if you didn't have to?
Oh, I would do so much.
Give us some examples.
I would travel. I would want to explore the Earth. I want to learn about the Earth, about the mysteries, biology, chemistry, physics. There's so much interesting stuff. So
can I stop you just a little bit, because a friend, I have friends that will say to you, okay, so you'll be lazy because you just want to explore the world and you just want to learn. Who is going to pick up the shit from the streets? Aaron. Who is going to do that? Like, who is going to pick up the shit, or who is going to do the dirty work?
I mean, if you guys pay me.
Cody will be the only slave on Earth.
People will have this argument.
Just picking up shit.
Fine, don't worry about it, guys. I got this.
So people have this argument. Like, what do you say to such people who have this argument and say, okay, you just want to sit there and just relax and travel and learn, but who is going to do the dirty jobs?
Well, I would say we try to automate as much as possible, and yeah, I guess people would be sane enough to pick up their shit and not just throw it on the street or, yeah, I don't know, from their dogs.
Yes, because if you don't know that someone will, if you don't know that someone will come to pick your dog's poop from the streets, and you live in that city, probably that will change your mentality, and maybe you will pick up that shit. You know, maybe in a way you make people lazy because you have slaves in this world. Because I can leave my house a mess as someone from Thailand or whatever is immigrant and he comes here for a poor paid job, and she will clean up the house for me. So we'll probably promote this way of thinking.
I think it also depends on like the context of like what we're talking about. Like, I can do whatever I want. Does that mean everyone can do whatever they want? Like, are we talking about generally there's no trade? Because I think the reason why people don't pick up their dog shit is because, you know, they're really in a hurry, or they don't give a shit about other people stepping in it, because they're against these people and not with them. So I think if we live in a world that's trade-free, where no one has to do anything, I think we're also less lonely, so they would also be less dogs in general as pets, I think, because I think we would socialize with each other instead of buying someone to be with you.
That's a good point.
I think there are a lot of things like in play there. Yeah.
Also, do you guys have you heard about these joggers in Sweden? They go jogging.
What?
The what?
Yeah,
Like
they go
the
jogging and they
trash
have
ones?
exactly. They have a plastic bag with them and they pick up the plastic rubbish on the street whenever they see something. So yeah,
They do
that's
that in Copenhagen too.
okay.
Canoes in the canals and stuff.
Nice.
And that's the point I wanted. That's why I asked you guys. I wanted for you to bring this into discussion, because you see, even in today's world where you are forced to do your shitty job, you still find thousands of people who will pick up the shit or
Yeah.
will do the dirty jobs. You have examples like that. So when people talk about such things, tell them that even in today's world, you have lots of such examples. And the more people, the freer the people you are, the more free they are, the more of such people will see. Because maybe I will explore the world and write books and whatever, but maybe I will too, like volunteer for a few hours a week to do the dirty jobs and so forth. This is already happening today. So I don't buy that the world will collapse and it will be a big pile of shit because no one will pick it. It will be like, not me, no one pays me. I don't buy that. I don't buy that.
Yeah, and I would also mention that, I mean, it's like people that would be in a trade-free world would be a different type of people. We wouldn't just put today's people. I mean, it needs the whole thing needs to, not just the system and the infrastructure. People need to evolve through education. So it's a different kind of person that would exist, basically. One that's better educated.
Well, and also, like, just looking around the city I live in, a lot of people will purposely vandalize something or destroy something because they're so disgruntled. Like, even though they may not admit that this system is fucked up and that it is harmful to human beings, like, they do still feel this disgruntled feeling, and they purposely damage things or throw shit on the ground because in their minds they're like, well, nobody cares about me, so why should I care about anything or anyone else? It's like, so yeah, I just feel like maybe if this system wasn't so abusive, people wouldn't feel the need to be so destructive and careless. They would care more because they would understand.
Yeah, the century of the self is kind of like, I guess, that mentality, almost that narcissistic push to, like, just you, be the best you can be, and kind of throwing out all your, like, friends, and, like, so it's like you can't even have, like, they did a survey very recently, and it was like, how many close friends could you, like, call on an emergency, and that number has gone from, like, 5 in the past 10 years to 0. And it's like, whoa, something's happening here, guys, and maybe we should do something about it.
Did I miss anything?
No, but that's very interesting, Cody. I actually just did a creative project about loneliness, and it's like it's really crazy actually when you dig into it, and like everyone is lonely. I think it was 60-something% of like all Americans who say that they, like, on a daily basis are, like, often alone. I can't now say all of it.
And isn't it ironic because we live in a social networks world? Isn't it ironic?
Everyone's connected. Everyone's so
4,000 followers, but 0 friends.
Yeah.
Something that was really interesting about the topic was that they found out that when people are lonely, because it's such a fundamental need, because we're social species, we go into this, like, preservation mode, which means that we get more hostile and then we get more lonely. So people get more and more lonely over time, and that's maybe also how people fall into depression and stuff like that, because it's just like a negative loop that just goes on and on and on.
Do you think it's more about feeling lonely than being lonely?
Yeah, I think there's a difference in being alone and being lonely, because it's a subjective feeling. Being lonely, definitely. It's right now I'm just on my own. But when you're lonely, it's like it was not a choice of mine. I didn't choose to now have my time alone and relax or whatever. I'm alone because I'm not a part of anything. I think that's the difference.
Yeah, you could be surrounded by 50 or 100 people, but you could feel super alone because you just don't fit in, or your value set is very, very different, or the opposite.
You can look at superstars or celebrities. Probably you will find that they are very lonely, even though they have so many followers. They're very lonely.
Yeah.
It's a very shallow. A lot of you can meet a lot of people and have a lot of friends, but there are a lot of shallow interactions that don't really like. I could have 10 friends, but like Cody was saying, if I have an emergency, like I get a flat tire on the side of the road, I can't call any of those people to come help me, or like I'm in the hospital, who can I call to come help me? You know, like that's when you get that lonely feeling. Like,
yeah, here's. Go ahead, Sophie.
No, I just wanted to quickly say that they also had another study where it showed that it like feeling lonely is not like loneliness is not only like it's not only a certain group, it's across all factors, like all ages, all classes, or like famous or not famous or whatever. So it's like a general problem. It's not like only like the losers of the society, it's everyone. Like also CEOs that hate their job but they still have to go, and then they don't have time for their kids, you know. So it's like
yeah, because everyone's a slave, and then they can sell them lots of pills, you know, and just keep it going. It's amazing how much drugs they advertise in Russia on the TV. I don't watch it, but now my aunt's apartment is kind of
at TV,
always
right?
in the background. It's making me crazy.
On TV, right?
yeah, on TV they advertise so many pharmaceuticals. It's insane.
So Romania
you shouldn't
Russia
even
is like Romania,
advertise.
like fucking
I
crazy.
think
It's the same
lot,
kind of thing. I think Romania is one of the only countries in the EU that advertises medicines or treatments on TV, which is crazy. It is like if you are in Romania, you have this impression that it's a cure for everything. If you watch TV, it's a pill for everything. I mean, you have a cancer or depression, it's a pill. You know, everything is crazy.
They even advertise like drugs to give to kids before they even have problems. Like take these drugs so that they won't have problems in the future. It's insane. and they also advertise when Russia comes out with new weapons on the news. Like, yeah, we have a new fucking drone that fucking puts out like a fucking machine gun drone. Like, yeah, we're probably
pills and weapons.
The same thing. Like, oh, if you have depression, medication, and then they even put like they slip it in the paperwork. There's an advertisement for the medication, and then I go talk to the doctor, and then they bring up that medication. I'm like, that's not why I'm here. That has nothing. I didn't talk about any of those symptoms. Like I don't have those symptoms, but they're trying to convince you that you do. It's like really crazy.
That's why you were here. You are here for because you're a consumer for them. You are a client. That's why it's such a danger to make the healthcare an industry, like the same way that you can make prisons, like in US, an industry. You know, the prisoners or the sick people are our clients, and that's extremely problematic.
Yeah, pharmaceutical reps are like sharks. You know, they get the doctors on board, and then the doctors sell their, and then the doctors get a bonus. It's real bad.
In Romania, most people go to pharmacies before going to the doctor. They go to the pharmacy and the pharmacist there, okay, I have the solution. No, it costs. They don't go to hospitals because they advertise so much in Romania. I don't even think they have hospitals. They only have pharmacies. Even if you want a surgery, you're going to a pharmacy. Can you have a surgery? It's crazy. But it's again because of the same influences as we talk about.
I think there's also like a social, like emotional kind of thing involved. Like I read this book written by this physician that's called Gabor Mate. I don't know if anyone knows him. And he also says that this thing about like everyone being so stressed and so in the whole game that they're so connected with how they feel that they just keep on going and keep on going and keep on going. Also because they have to, obviously, but it's also this thing that being cool, like being accepted in this world, you're kind of like cold. You're not feeling anything. You're just powering through, and you can do it. You know. So I think there's also this thing about if you're like there's a lack of acceptance that like to feel things. Like if you're in a problem in your life, you just take a pill. Like you don't feel it because you have to keep going, kind of. So just take a pill and then you like keep on like going on the train. Yeah.
If you don't feel the problem, it doesn't mean that the problem has gone. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You put anesthesia.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's still there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes when I watch nature documentaries, and I see a bunch of lions sitting there on the grass and being like it's a Sunday afternoon for them, and I'm like, fuck, these animals have less worries than us, you know. They don't have fucking like what are we going to eat tonight, you know. What about my death, you know? What about, you know, you see the other lions, they have such a cool phone or shit like that. They don't worry about such things, but we made this society to stress us so much. Even when we have so much shit, it's never enough. That's why you keep the slaves in the game, because you are never a happy slave. You are not useful for anyone if you are happy with your life. You know, I have very few things, but I am happy. Most people have so much shit, but they are not happy.
Yeah, because if you're happy, you're not gonna buy more shit.
Maybe you're a happy slave if you're on pills.
Or you appear to be happy.
Yeah. The illusion.
It's a zombie-like state.
Yeah.
We can go to the other news quickly, and then we can probably, because I think we are 2 hours in.
Yep.
YouTube will kick us out. I think we can talk like for 45 hours straight. But it's a very important topic, of course. I think that I'm not sure if we should go to the other news, but it was something like I've seen. Hold on. So I've seen this another because we talk about slaves and the motivation and stuff like that. I've seen a project that citizen scientists, people from all around the world, are going out and photographing mosquitoes. So they see what kind of mosquitoes are where, so that they don't spread disease. So they help with this kind of project. It's a big project. It's a worldwide project. So I liked this kind of news. This was one news, and of course another news is like Facebook. It's, you know, this is such a stupid thing. On Facebook, most of the illegalities in this world and the illegal stuff is happening on Facebook and Instagram. But everyone is accusing other companies, like other small kind of scammers. But I've seen so many articles and documentaries showing how scammers organize on Facebook. Live suicide videos are streamed on Facebook, or someone kills someone else is streamed on Facebook. So Facebook, it's a place full of illegalities, but because it's so big, no one can challenge Facebook, you know. So it's just a way to just think about it, you know. They sell drugs. The best way to sell drugs today, Instagram, which was like, what? Yeah, the best way to sell drugs, you can go on Instagram and make an account, and they have their own language. I was like, it's interesting. Instead of saying weed or something like that, they have some they talk with emoticons, you know, and you cannot figure out what they are saying there. So yeah, Facebook is continuing to be a fucking hole in the ground.
That's something else.
Yeah. Well, that was basically it in terms of news. I mean, we can talk about other things, but no. Let's summarize it if we can. I think it's interesting to summarize this subject. If someone will say, okay, what do you think about this modern slavery? What would you guys say? Who is brave to start first?
I would say that we're all slaves to some degree. We can't separate ourselves from the system. So the system itself needs to change if we want to solve these problems.
Yeah, I would say our system is based on trade. So that means that everybody needs to trade anything, so anybody is forced to do something, which is kind of, yeah, your slave.
Yeah, and maybe that it starts with education as well, so that people understand, like, so that they can have empathy and understand that it's not about the individual, so that everyone is forced to do whatever they're doing.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I would just repeat that wherever there's trade, there's slavery, because trade creates hierarchies, trade creates pyramid type structures, it creates force, it creates subservience, and all those different elements that are part of being a slave, and yeah, pushing people to do things they don't want to do for a means that will only serve a couple of few who will also not necessarily get anything out of it in the long run. Yeah.
Understanding and technology will free us from this nonsense. A saner world.
AKA Trump.
I will say that in the same way that a Muslim or a Christian, they don't have anything that's rational to understand their ridiculous behavior or their ridiculous beliefs. Someone who is slaves in today's society has no inborn mechanism to understand that he or she is a slave. So you have to understand that you are a slave in order for you to get out of the situation. Else, you will think that everything is fine. So this is adding on top of everything that you said is excellent. And if you, Sasha, if you want to say something.
Sorry, it just reminded me of like, sorry, I just had this, last time I worked, there was like, I don't know, I had this time where I really realized that like, holy fuck, like, okay, I understand that I'm just a slave when I have to work, right? Or in general, like, whatever, but at this time I'm really fucking slave, right, making money. And there was just one time that I went through all this stuff and really realized that nobody else understands this. Like, nobody else in that fucking restaurant understands that it's just a fucking game, you know, and they're a slave in this game. And it's sad, yeah. So,
we have to free the slaves.
Yeah, but they're slaves in their mind more than anywhere else. So it's hard to free yourself in your own mind.
You should take
and the
them
world
out to
does
the
not
woods.
based on slaves. Yeah.
Take them
And
out
the
to
world-
Siberia or something.
Huh?
You should take them out to Siberia.
Yeah. And then they'll fucking die.
To cool their minds.
Exactly.
And I will only add that a world where you don't force people to do shit, it will be a world where people will invent a lot of stuff and they know how to organize themselves. So don't be scared that it will be a complete chaos if you force people to do something. Don't be scared because it's already happening in many pockets in the world today. It's not a big problem. It's actually a solution. So I think, yeah, that's it. It was quite a great Trumpcast because so many people, I love that. You know, and for those who wonder, like, where is Dima? Because Dima was here from the beginning. He's in a band. He has tours around Europe, and he will get back in like 2 weeks or so.
Band is called Mara, right?
Yeah, the band is called Mara.
Check it out, it's Mara.
Yeah, Cody is a big
You know
fan.
any stories?
Yeah, oh, he's got tons of Canadian fans here now.
Yeah, you spread the word about it. Huh?
Oh yeah, we love it. It's great.
So next week, same hour. Hopefully, Cody is going to start the stream.
Should be good.
Okay, so we can stop the stream.
All right, bye everyone.
Bye bye.